Welcome, welcome. It's another episode of the Gothic Heart. And today I have a USA Today best-selling author here. Kel is here and she writes, yes, you guessed it, paranormal Gothic novels, of course, because why else would we have her here? And I am going to have her introduce herself. And I want her to brag some because there's far too much for me to share alone, so she'll share it for us, okay? So glad you're here, Kel. Take it away.
Okay. So again, I am Kel. I am a USA Today bestselling author and an Amazon bestselling author. I have books that are translated into German, French, Hungarian, and Portuguese. I've worked with tons of publishers, and many of my series are bestsellers. This is probably my most well-known one, the special edition of it, my Queen of the Dam series. It's got everyone's favorite raccoon on it, so
So
I'm
pretty.
excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Thanks. You have a lot of books that I think you're well known for, or series in any case, especially when you start hunting them down. I mean, even just when I was looking at things that you wrote and just reading like brief descriptions, I was like, oh, add to list. Yep, add to list. So I think I'm going to be booked up with reading, booked up. Ooh, that's good. Reading some of your books over the next few months. Well, I mean, and I also love to read, and so do my kids. They already have Kindles, so I mean, we'll hold off on your books for them yet because they're 9 and 7.
Good.
But in any case, I would love to start just where I kind of start with everybody is. I mean, maybe your childhood, whatever, but how did you even get into the paranormal, the spooky, the eerie, all of this good stuff that we love?
I just sort of gravitated towards it all my life. The first series I ever read by myself was Harry Potter, and I think that really like established a love for all things fantasy. And then from there, I just continued reading more and more books, and I found that I really liked the ones that were a little bit dystopian or fantasy, paranormal. I love the spooky vibes. I'm really digging those. The current series I'm working on is like dark witchy vibes, and I'm all about it. So it makes me super happy inside. Um, but yeah, I mean, I started writing at 15, so pretty young. I just always gravitated towards it though.
Yep. I mean, that's a lot of our stories. I mean, me too. I was just always into those things. You see, like my artwork from first grade. I mean, you just, it's just always been something. So that's great. And then how did you know that like a love of writing? I mean, I heard we got a love of reading, but then you started writing at 15. How did you know that this love was going to be, this is it, this is what you're going to turn into your career?
Honestly, it's because I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. So, and my family really wanted me to have a backup plan. So I did start college and do chemistry. I didn't graduate with a chemistry degree. I graduated with a religious studies degree. But my writing career took off when I was in college, so I switched my degrees to an easier one since chemistry was quite difficult. And I finished up with that, and then I just continued writing full time after that. So it took off right from the get go for me. I didn't really have to wait long for my career to sort of develop. I'm really
It's like the
fortunate.
dream.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I have a really good eye for marketing, which I think helps
Ooh.
just naturally without like having to try super hard. But I also take in a lot and I learn a lot based on like the world around me and what other people are doing and publishers and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, that eye for marketing just not my forte. I try to surround myself with people who do because I missed that part. I have a lot of things I can do, but not the marketing. So that's good because you hear, I mean, and granted, I don't know how much of it's true, but like you hear like you had spoken for Harry Potter, like J.K. Rowling like shopped it around a whole bunch and nobody would buy it. You just hear
Yeah.
things like that. I don't know if they're true, right? So, and then as we know, like obviously she's a very well-known popular author now. So what were those people like? Why was it so hard in the beginning? But like you said, I mean, marketing is probably, and marketing yourself has got to be a huge part of it. So did you, so what route did you take? So we've had an author on here before and she's self-published from the get-go. So what route, and again, I'm not very familiar with the process. So what route did you take from the beginning in college or when college when it started taking off?
So I'll actually start when I was 16. I tried to sell to an agent then, and I had a couple people that were interested, but no bites. So I kind of took a break throughout high school, let myself get a bit more established, explore some other interests. Fast forward to college, I was like, okay, I don't want to wait around anymore. I want to see what this is going to do. And at the end of the day, if it's going to take off, it's going to do it regardless. Like either people will love it or they'll hate it, but I'm not going to know until I do it. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to publish this and we'll see how it goes. And so I self published from the beginning and I've been self publishing since then.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Because earlier you had said like a variety of different publishers. So that I was like,
So my audio and my foreign translations, a lot of those are through publishers
gotcha.
that I've worked with directly in that, and they've published some pretty big authors, so it's very exciting.
Okay. So self-published. Okay. So sorry, I'm just really interested in this, especially now that you had like clarified your marketing is like a way like that got you going so fast. So you self-published. How do you get from your self-publishing, people are reading your books, et cetera? Like, how did you know it was the right time to expand? And by expand, I mean do the audio, do the translations, do all of the extra.
So expanding kind of happened when I was about midway through my career. I didn't start off that way.
Mhm.
Um, I had an audio publisher approach me wanting audio rights, and because I wasn't
Mm.
super interested in audio at the time, I was like, sure, why not? So I sold rights to a bunch of my series. And worked with them. And I don't regret that. Like, it was a good move for me at the time because I wouldn't have pursued it on my own yet. It was later on when I decided, like, hey, I want to sell the same book as many ways as I possibly can. So I'm going to do my own audio and see how that goes. And I found it really easy. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to translate myself and see how that goes. A little bit more difficult, but still fairly easy. It's only when I've now got 31 books out and a lot of them are translated into multiple languages. It's a lot to manage at that point because it's more like 100 books instead of 30 books.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine.
that's when I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go with a publisher for a lot of my foreign translations now because it's just becoming too much for me to manage on my own.
But that sounds like exactly the right method, like to go, which is sort of how I'm taking my business right now. I haven't, um, I mean, I outsource very little at the moment, just my website redesign because I have a lot of features that I won't know how to code into. And ChatGPT can only code me so far in Shopify. But so I've got like a developer and stuff, but I mean as far as releasing my first collection and everything, yeah, I'm still keeping it all in house, waiting for that moment when it gets to be, I mean it is too much for me, granted, but I mean really, really too much, like how you described. Not
If
just
you
I'm
need
over.
someone to help you with Shopify, I actually have a girl that does mine that I can recommend. That she's good
Oh,
at the coding side of it.
oh, I mean, my people are almost done because my launch is October. I don't know when we're airing this, but it's September 25th, so we're very close to October. But for future stuff, yeah, because it's kind of, I mean, we'll talk. We'll talk offline.
Definitely,
But
definitely.
great to know. And also, anyone out there that needs that kind of help, we could definitely, reach out to Kel and get her friend's info for, and we'll have Kel's reach out information in the show notes. But so let's talk about okay. So how has your writing evolved? Because I know what some of your most recent stuff, or I mean, I read about it and stuff. Again, gonna read. Um, so how has it evolved from what
So
you were writing before?
I started off in YA, but even when I was in YA, I was kind of like the black sheep of YA. Like my characters cursed a lot. They dealt with more adult type situations. Like I've been told a number of times that my 15, 16-year olds acted like 18, 19-year olds
I
instead.
mean,
And I kind
but
of wish
that's
I had aged them that way, looking back at it, just
mm,
because I now only write adults. So I kind of wish I knew that from the beginning, but I didn't. Um, but I quickly moved into adult. So I've only got one series that's like YA plus is what I call it. So that I'm not shocking anyone if they're like, oh, I want YA, and then there's a bunch of F bombs.
I mean, but come on, like YA movie TV series. Okay, okay, maybe not cursing because you're not allowed, but those themes are far more adult than I ever dealt with, and they're always like 16. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
I wrote it during that age, and so for me, it was very real. And I kind of laugh now when I do have readers that are like, these thoughts are so unrealistic for a 16-year-old. I wrote it at 16. I can tell you exactly what 16-year-olds think like. And it's not what you want to remember once you're an adult because you're like, oh my God, they're children. But they're little adults. Like they're learning to become adults and they have adult feelings and emotions and hormones, God forbid hormones.
Mm.
So I actually don't take those reviews to heart at all when it comes to that, just because I'm like, yeah, I remember that age pretty well. Um, as much as now that I've got my own child, I'm like, oh, he's a child.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I'm trying to like keep them young as much as possible.
Oh yeah,
Oof.
mine's turning 3 in December, and I'm just like, please don't keep getting bigger. I love you at this age. You still want to snuggle, and you love mommy, and I'm like the number one in your life, and let's keep it that way.
Oh, I wish it stays that way. I mean, it doesn't like go away entirely, but yeah,
You're like, you forced me to
eventually.
become a child.
So, your adult books, obviously, well, not obviously, have adult themes. So, and you have a lot of, I mean, it's always said, like, I don't know by who, but like out there that like Buffy was that first girl heroine, girl power, girl supernatural or whatever. But you have a lot of that going on, and you also have a lot of adult themes. So I think they could be, I mean, I feel like there are role models within, or just really people to look up to, or to think, model some of the ways that they might think or act. So, did you, when you were creating these people, were those things running through your mind? Were you trying to create these characters that way?
Not necessarily. It's just what I gravitated towards. When I started writing, I was bullied a lot in middle school and high school. So writing was kind of an outlet for me. And I really liked the idea of a strong woman that, what other people's opinions of her didn't really matter. I liked, kick butt women. That was something that I really liked reading about. And at the time, there wasn't as many books that had that. Like the women were usually softer, more gentle. And so the rare few that I found, I really liked. And I decided I was going to write that. And so that's just how my brand has evolved is I write that and then I write that for many, many ages, many genres.
Yep. Kick butt women. I like that. Yes. We could all, I mean, there's not enough that we're seeing. I mean, it gets better, right? It's getting better, but yes.
Better in the last 10 years or so, compared to like when I was in middle school, there just wasn't very much at the time.
Yep. So, and I love that paranormal has just become so much more, at least accepted. I remember, you wouldn't even see a vampire TV show or something, or it would get canceled after a season. But nowadays we see all kinds of paranormal things. So, when are we going to see yours become a TV show, huh? Huh?
I would love that. So I really want a Shonda Rhimes TV show. That's like my dream come true.
Whoa.
I want to work with her, and I think that she would like anything she does turns to gold. So I think it would be amazing. I don't even care what book series she picks. I'm like, you pick the one you want to do. Like, I am open to changes. I am open to what you want to do to make it even better because that's what she does to things. So
That
that's
is, I agree. There's a kick butt woman right there, right?
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
total place.
So, aside from our kick butt women that we were talking about, we do, or you do have some very like morally complex characters, like both dark, both light, and a lot of those characters are, they could, I'm not necessarily saying villain, but almost like the bad guy or the ones that's supposed to be the bad ones, but you fight for them and you get feelings for them. So that is a very like complex character. How do you even begin to, I see them, I read about them, I can't even begin to fathom how you create something like that.
So when it comes to complex characters, for me, it's less like how do I create this person and more that a voice just like starts talking in my head. And like I know it sounds crazy, like it sounds so
No,
insane.
it's meant to
But it's like
be.
I usually see like an idea for a meet cute. That's typically where my stories start. And then the personalities start to take form. And so like if we're gonna talk about, a series that really embraces darkness, Dark Magi turns light and dark on its head where you have Quinn, who's definitely at least an anti hero, if not a little bit more morally gray. And Lazarus is actually an anti villain. So in any other story, he would have been the villain of the story. But, because it's his story, like every hero to yourself, you're the hero of the story, you know? And so, like, with that, I really played with that idea a lot in Dark Magi about how they would perceive themselves. And it's twisted, but you still root for them. So I don't know. I listen to what the voices say and what they tell me, and I kind of get a feel for it. And then I just run from there. I don't even think about what I'm going to write. Like when I sit down, I just kind of start going and see what happens.
That's amazing. That's like truly showing that this is what you're meant to do, which is amazing. But then on the other hand of that, like, how do you even plan, or maybe you don't, for, you're doing a series, so maybe a few books down the road, how it's going to evolve? Because don't you have to have some of those pieces in the first? And I mean, how does that even, my head just went crazy with outlines, like, whoo, too much.
So it depends. When it comes to things like the Dark Magi series, the first three books were actually written before book one came out. And so if you do that, you're able to easily go back and make changes in book one that really weave in things that are relevant later, especially during edits and whatnot. And so that's one way to do it. Another way is like, there's been times that I've done a series and it's like, I kind of have an idea of the end point. I don't know how many books it'll take to get there, but I'll know it when I see it. So I just keep working my way towards it and hope that everything makes sense in the end.
So the way that you had those three and then went back into the one, that makes perfect sense. So you just don't publish those three?
Yeah,
You
until I
just
was ready
write
to
them in?
go. Like, it's actually a 5 book series. The first three were written though, and I was working on book four when book one came out. So it made it much
Gotcha.
easier because by book four, I knew the ending. Like, I was ready to go. I was like, this is how this series is going to go. There's going to be a huge battle, blah, blah, blah. Like, everything was layered so perfectly. That's probably the series, like, I don't know if it's the one I'm most proud of, but it's at least tied for it.
Maybe that's the one I should start with. This light and dark and all of that you talk about is part of my brand. We've got the sparkles, we've got the, pinks and pastels and fun, ethereal stuff, but we've also got the Victorian, Gothic, and lace and things like that in my jewelry brand. So I'm like, that feels like a good one for me, especially with my relaunch to start with, because I had like a bunch at to list. So I'm gonna make note of that. Um, so I'm like trying to like see how you do this, and I'm thinking if someone's listening, like would this be giving them advice? Like, is this just something you learned throughout trial and error? Like, this is self-taught?
For writing,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
definitely trial and error. I've always had an eye for patterns. So when I was a teenager, I would annotate books like Twilight and kind of pick up the ups and downs of
Mhm.
stories and where they should naturally happen. So when I was writing my own book, like the first one, I would try to plot. I didn't really know how to plot, but I would try to, and I would have ups and downs based around what I saw in other books. And over time, I didn't really have to think about it. Like the story just naturally does it because writing is a muscle. Like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets in a lot of ways. Um, so yeah, I would definitely say self-taught on that one because I didn't explore an English degree or anything that would have
Right.
probably helped me.
Have you used any mentors or other authors for advice?
I mean, I always talk to other authors to get a feel for like their process and seeing if there's something in their process that I can bring into my process. But I find that processes are so specific to people. Like, as much as, so there's something called the Pomodoro method, where essentially you write for like 5 or 10 minutes and then you take a 5 minute break and then you write for 5 or 10 minutes and you'll do this like 15 times. This
Okay.
method for a lot of people works, but I am not one of them. I tried it, I failed at it so hard. Like, I could not get into it. By the time I was like getting into the story, my minutes would be up and I'd be like, now I have to pause. This is great.
Mm.
Not. Um,
That doesn't sound like that for me either. Like, if I'm into something, like, I need to just do it while I am.
so that was one of the things that like I had to trial a lot was how did I work best writing? And I found that, once I get into it, I do better turning everything off, starting my chapter and just going until I finish the chapter or the scene, depending on whichever, works out. Like I have a set point that once I reach it, I'm like, okay, I'm done for today. And I don't always know where it's at. I just know it when I hit it.
I wish I had that. I've just got my long, ever going list of things I always have to do. And I try to be like, okay, I need this many done today, right? But man, I got to learn from you on a stopping point. And then maybe you could also give me advice. Like, once I get going, I'm great. I do a lot, but getting going, like, really, can you just sit down, turn everything off, and you're ready to go? Or do you need to, like, hype yourself up or
So, one of the things I started doing early on was I would train my brain using music. So, when I hear certain songs, my brain knows that it's time to write, and I pair them with specific characters so that my brain knows to get into that character's mindset very quickly. And this worked really well for me.
this sounds amazing. Okay, how did you train it?
So, I create a playlist for something, and when I'm planning it and I'm thinking about it in my head and I'm just listening to the characters, I listen to that playlist. And then when I start writing, I only play it while I'm writing so that my brain associates those songs with that writing. And over time, like by the middle of the book, it's pretty on point so that I can actually just go into it when I start. That was a really big thing for me because otherwise I had trouble getting into it, at the beginning of day usually.
Yeah. Well, and I do too. I mean, especially, I mean, I don't always work when my kids are home, but if they don't need me, I will. But if they come in and stop me, then like I get stuck, I'm like in a weird spot and I'm like trying to figure it out and get back into it. That's where it is. But I love this music idea. I love this. Well, my gosh, I wonder if I could have like a song for each piece or each collection. Ooh, okay. I'm going to play with that. So that's actually really great advice. So thank you for that. Um, and I love how you explained like how you sort of, I mean, I know it just comes to you a lot because you're extremely talented, but explained like how you come across and like even like going through chapters and then you were talking, or not chapters, the series, the books and going back and tying things in. So I love that, or you have an idea from the beginning and how long it will take you to get there. So with that, I mean, characters are, yes, complex, difficult. I mean, I am not a right. I was a lawyer, so my writing is as concise and pithy as you can be, and no flowery. Like it is like if my sentence is more than like 5 or 6 words, So like, novel writing or that kind of thing will never be my forte, just because I practiced so long at being a concise legal writer, right? But the characters are complex. But then you have these whole worlds behind the scenes. And, of course, we can compare it to Harry Potter, whereas, like, right, like everything is called something different, everything has comparison. I mean, it's just mind blowing. And you have that same kind of thing. So, I mean, in my head, I'm looking like a mind map with like things flying out everywhere. And you're probably just going to say, it comes to me and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to be so jealous. But I mean, how do you, the worlds, it seems like 10 times the work per character coming up with these worlds and continuity and everything.
So those
Please
don't
help.
just come to me. I will say that. Those ones I actually have to think about. So when I'm creating a high fantasy in particular, I have to sit down. I usually start creating a map and then dividing it into countries. And from those countries, I sort of think about what distinguishes them. So stuff like religion, languages, things they value, like their moral compass and the overall, just like how their capital works, how their society works, who's in charge, is it matriarchal, is it patriarchal? So like that you see a lot of difference in my different countries because of that. Where it's like I have a pirate queen that rules a city in one of the in Dark Magi, for instance, and then we have like a small tribe in the mountains that has a chief, and so there's a huge range, from what happens and how it's built. Um, and that's usually just me asking myself questions like, what if this happened? Or what if that happened? Or like, I write down ideas when I'm like, oh, I really want to write a book about something with this. So I see if it fits in with that story. Like, I really want to write a book with a circus. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's still on the list. But eventually I'll hit a book where I'm like, does this work? And it will work and it will be amazing. We're just not there yet. So,
No, but it sounds exciting. I used to be in the circus when I was younger, Cirque San Jose, like a Cirque du Soleil type thing. So the circus one sounds amazing. But also, I love, okay, so this map, I mean, this makes perfect sense now.
mhm,
This map that you make, is this before you start the series?
yeah.
Okay. And do you ever write one-off books?
So I do write some standalones. I haven't written a high fantasy standalone. If I did, I would probably do multiple couples within the same world so that all of the world building that
Mm.
goes into it wasn't wasted. It's a lot to do for just one book. Usually you need to have like two, three, five, whatever. The one that I'm working on after the current series, like I'm wrapping up the last book in my witchy, like Gothic trilogy. Um, my next one is a high fantasy, and I have ideas for like 4 or 5 different couples in it. And some of them will be standalones. Like the first one, I think, is probably going to be a trilogy, maybe longer. Not sure yet. but I want to use that world and really explore like every aspect of it. So I'm excited about that.
I can't wait for you to finish this Gothic Witchy trilogy. That'll be the one I go to next then. Oh, so exciting. And if listeners, if you haven't heard at least one thing here, then I'm not sure why you're at the Gothic Heart, because all of these are things that would like excite all of our listeners. Um, so we've talked, I mean, I got answers to so many of my questions and I love hearing about your process. Um, and oh gosh, the advice about the music. Okay, I'm really excited about that. But for anyone, how about any other 16, 15-year olds that are trying to start writing now or know they want to be an author and have all these ideas? What advice can you give them? Because that was literally your experience.
So for me, the biggest thing, I used to have this acronym, BIC, like the pen, but in chair. It really comes down to you need to get your first manuscript done. Everything after that, honestly, is easier because once you've done it, you know you can do it again. And it makes
Ah,
finishing book 2, book 4, book 10 much easier each time you do it. So you just got to finish the one. Don't give up halfway through. Don't go off and write a different project. Those are two really big things that happen for a lot of people and why they never finish a book because they decide, oh, something else is talking, or oh, this one's too hard to do now for whatever reason. And I've written myself into a hole where you probably haven't, you just need to talk it out, you know? So that is my big advice is finish the book and then worry about what to do with it.
that is really good advice. I could totally see myself being like, oh, in the middle, like, no, I got a better idea and starting. So yes, good point. Just finish it. I mean, finished is better.
And that's
It's
such a
at that
thing.
point.
Like so many people hit the middle. Like I hit the middle and I'm like, oh, I'm so fucking done with this book. And but I finish it because I'm like, well, readers are waiting on it. Like half the time I put up a pre-order specifically so that there's something holding me accountable. And I'm like, well, readers are waiting for it, so I got to do it. I don't have a choice.
I 100% did that. I started posting about my launch in October, so I wouldn't have a choice but to like hit that deadline. But I had a date in mind, which I don't think I'm going to hit. So at least I'm glad I didn't put a specific date in
Yeah.
October on my launch. But like, totally, it holds me account like a deadline, or not deadline, but just like knowing that there's more to it than just you in
Yeah,
your head
having
and you
some
can
sort of
justify it.
accountability can definitely help.
Big time. And lastly, I really want to hear about like the adult themes and how you brought those in and the romance parts and what those mean to the story. And I mean, at least nowadays or maybe I was just living in a barn or something, but over the past few years, I feel like those kinds of books have really exploded and grown in popularity, or maybe it's just people talk about them more, like those smutty books we weren't allowed to talk about before. I don't know what it is, but it's so much more prevalent now. Or maybe I was living in a barn. So yeah, please share.
They're definitely more prevalent now. That is not just you. Before, I want to say like about a decade ago, you likely would only find a couple authors that had books that were considered smutty. And today smut puts all of that to shame. So it definitely has evolved with the times, and I'm really happy about that actually because I think stories where women are able to embrace themselves and their sexuality are really important. It's something that we've kind of been geared away from for so long, just looking at the history of the world, where we're supposed to be pure and we're supposed to like wait for our husbands and this and that. And I think stories that don't do that, that actually focus on like sexual empowerment, personal empowerment, just like having confidence in oneself, I think those are really good for a lot of people to read. And even when it comes to young adults, like I was a teenager reading adult stuff and I don't feel like that was wrong really for most of it because especially if you're reading stuff that's like healthy relationships and showing you like what it would be like to be in your own power, I think that that's really good actually for teens that are old enough to be able to read that sort of thing. Obviously you wouldn't hand it to a 13-year-old, but you know, when you're 17 or something, like at some point you usually level up from reading YA to something more adult.
Yes.
What that looks like depends. I always gravitated towards romance. the books that had like, I want to say Shatter Me was the one that really made a difference for me because she falls in love with the bad guy in the end. And in the first book, like I was so interested in the bad guy and I didn't want her to end up with the guy that she was with at the time. And I didn't know if the author would go that way because that's how they always went. They always ended up with this goody two shoe dude that
Right.
like they had no chemistry. And so I expected that. And when it didn't happen, my mind was blown. I was like, this is the beginning of everything for me. So like in all of my stuff, usually there's a very complex like push and pull between the main characters to get to the point of an actual relationship. A lot of times it is not developed in one book. It usually takes two or three books. And then it's like testing the relationship and seeing what can happen. But beyond that, I think other adult themes that you really see are women that are in power. That's a big one too that you see in adult fantasy is women that are kind of coming into their roles and not just like coming of age, but really embracing what it means to be feminine and in charge. I think that's a really cool thing to.
I mean, it matches perfectly with your kick butt women,
Mhm.
etc. I mean, and when you're saying those things about, oh, sorry, when you're saying those things about ending up with the bad guy, like, just my head, I mean, just because I grew up with, I mean, we basically were the same year in high school, the TV show Buffy.
Mhm.
I think of how much I just did not like the Angel relationship, but I loved
Yeah.
Spikes with her, right? And that's the same thing. And then you go to Vampire Diaries and blech, Stefan, yes, Damon. So it's like
Yes.
the same thing. Yeah, yes, Damon. And she, well, not gonna spoil it for anyone, but if you
Yeah.
haven't watched it, I mean,
It's pretty
yay. I mean,
obvious from the very beginning who she should be with.
yeah.
Like, and it's not like Stefan isn't attractive. He is. He's just not right for her.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. I mean, and you see the difference, and I mean, obviously that's TV, but it came from a series. I mean, if you read the books, they're very different, or in many aspects. But I think what you're saying about, I mean, you're also portraying what are real relationships. I mean, it's not every guy. I mean, come on, what teenager is going for the guy that's right for them? Or the girl that's right for them, right? They're always going for the bad one or the one they can't have, right? I mean, so this is real life. The goody two shoes ones you were talking about before. I mean, maybe there's some. I mean, yes, obviously, I'm sure it happens, but like
There's books
so
where
much.
it makes sense. I like writing on the darker side of things, though, where you explore that and you see, like, just because someone might be a bad boy doesn't mean that, they're going to cheat on you or that they're horrible or that, those things that your parents say about them are true. And that looking beneath the exterior is a really big thing for my books. Um, I also like to explore strength when it comes to like you have kick butt women, but you can also have strong women that are book smart, that are not the gun toting type, and that there's different kinds of strength. And that's really important to show that too. So that's something that I've really fallen in love with in the last like couple of years because before I was very like hardcore, you know, if she could kick his ass, that's great. But I've since becoming a mom, I was like, I really kind of like the quiet strength where she can stand in her own power and not be a pushover. I think that that's really awesome.
Not being a pushover, that's gosh, that's such an important thing for all of. I mean, I have three daughters, like
Yeah.
always trying to teach them not care what other people think, and yeah, so that's a big one. And as much as so okay, so what we've talked about, like as much as we did here, like the things come to you and it just writes, but like the more we dig in, you do have all of these important themes that you are trying to like connect and address and stuff. So there is, I mean, but no, that's good. I mean, it's great that writing is so like it comes to you so easily. I mean, that's what you're doing for a career, so it's important that you love it, right? But it's also like you can see like these are things that I'm noticing or mirroring in my life, like you just said, now that you've got a kid and you're putting it out there because there are other people going through that exact same parts in their life and mirroring that it's going to really reach to. So I think that's amazing. Um, I think that's amazing. So we're going to wrap up. But before we do, is there anything that I didn't cover that you want to share? A new release almost here? What did I miss?
So, Premonition of Peace is the last book in the Her Immortal Monsters trilogy, and that one's coming out October 31st. Um,
Perfect
that
day.
date is actually like really relevant to the books. They take place over Samhain, so and I probably just butchered the hell out of that. So I apologize to
That's
anyone.
how I say it too. But again, I've only ever read it, and that's how it's
I've only
written.
ever read it, and so I'm like, I don't know like what the technical pronunciation is, but I feel like I
Well,
should apologize
we'll
for
get
that.
back to you on the if that's wrong. We'll get back. We'll put it in the notes or something.
Yeah, that would be good. But yeah, so that's coming. I'm finishing up. I should be done working on it in the next week or two. So I'm really excited to be doing that so that I can move on to my next project. Like I'm already halfway there mentally.
And I know I said we were wrapping up, but real quick, what does that look like? So you're going to release the book, so you're going to self-publish. So like you're gonna, I mean, like how many hard copies do you order? Is there a pre-order? Are you doing book signings? Is there a tour? Is there a, what does this mean?
So it looks really different for everyone. In my case, because this is the last book in series, it's pretty mellow. I do have a pre-order on my website and in general, like across Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes and Noble, all of that. Because I'm wide, so that means that I sell my books everywhere versus just in Kindle Unlimited, which if you're exclusive to Kindle Unlimited, you can only sell there. You can't sell anywhere else.
Gotcha.
So I sell everywhere, and my book is available currently for people to pre-order. And then come the 31st, it'll drop. I'm actually giving away book one for free right now for a limited time. So I've been promoting that a good bit. And I've got some things going on in October to really push that to get more people into the series. I think it's a really good way for people to see if they're into that and if they like it. You know, I mean, what sort of low barrier threshold like beats a free book, honestly?
Nothing. I'm like
Then you're not
ready
having to invest
ready
money this time, and if you like it, then the time is fine. So, you know, that's kind of my game plan for that, and it's something that I've done with several series, and it's actually worked out really well. So yeah, that's kind of my plan.
I I can just see that's going to suck me in too because I always want book after book after book. Like I don't want to have to start learning new worlds and new this, right? So if I read one and I know there's more, man, there's no way. I'm definitely going to have to read the rest. Like so excellent. I could totally see why that works. And then so you just based on the pre-orders, you know how many hard copies to get or are they carried
Yeah,
in
so you're able
stores?
to pre-order a hard copy or a paperback copy or a special edition copy, all of that beforehand. So I know how many to get based on that. And then I
Very
just order
cool.
more all the time because people tend to buy after the books come out more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's so cool. Like glimpse into the process or another world. It's a whole other world that I know nothing about. I mean, my process right now is all about custom jewelry and a jewelry collection.
Yeah.
So I love hearing everything that you do and your process and sort of, I mean, the background or thought process between each of my collections. Like I'm sort of
Hmm.
thinking how you do like not I'm not like oh kick butt feminine or whatever but I do have that same sort of this is what I want it to get and convey, this is how I want people to feel when they wear it, this is the type of person I am creating for, etc. Really goes into it, so it's not just sort of a oh ooh look a pretty heart, ooh a skull, you know, it's not just like a random
Yeah.
hodgepodge. So I feel you on that part. That part is where like we could merge or overlap. Well, thank you so much. We're going to have everything in the show notes, where to follow you, links to find your books, and your upcoming release. Maybe I don't know when this is going to air, but you know, I'm going to try to time it to around when your book release is coming out because I think that'd be really fun. Yeah, that would
Really
be a
fun.
great way to do it. Um, and so, oh gosh, I feel like we talked about so many things. I'm thinking back to the Shopify thing in the beginning. But anyway, we'll have everything in the notes. So definitely make sure you give Kel a follow or just check out some of them or just go get the free book, right? Free,
Yeah.
free.
Go get
No,
the
free,
book.
everybody.
If you look at any of my platforms right now, it's one of the first posts you'll see. It says in giant letters that it's free and where to get it. So
Yeah, that's kind of like we should start like this first episode with hey, free book, free, right?
free,
Because that's going to catch
free. Everyone
everybody's.
loves free things.
So at least do that. But in the meantime or in the interim, like I know that something we've said has resonated with you, or you know someone that's going to like these books or that's going to like this podcast. So please share these episodes, follow, subscribe. The more you do,
I'm sorry. My dog
that's
just
okay. My dog was barking too, guys. Real life dogs bark. Here we are. um, and so just share, follow, subscribe. That's how I mean more people can find out about Kel, and more people can find about the fun guests and things that we talk about here on the Gothic Heart. So thank you again for listening, and thank you, Kel, for being here. And we'll see you at the next episode. Bye for now.